what happened to us, I'll tell the story. So my wife was pregnant with our second child, who was a little girl named Phoebe. And she was perfect the whole pregnancy. Like our doctor would always make a joke at the checkups, and she's reading the textbook in there, like on size, on development, like everything was textbook. She had a heartbeat that was so strong that you could hear it on the Doppler. I think it's called a Doppler. Before you even dropped it to my wife's stomach, you could hear it. It got picked up. So we go in for an appointment at 40 weeks because she's full term. And my wife isn't ready to have the baby yet. And but she's 40 weeks. And our son was late too, so we didn't think anything of it. And we had a great appointment, and doctor's like, okay, so I guess we need to start having a conversation about, well, do we want to induce or do we just want to wait? And he's like, I think we should at least talk about a date for inducing. So why don't you guys come back in a couple days and we'll have that discussion then. And we're like, okay, cool. So we made an appointment 5 days later, and then 5 days later we went back, and my wife, she laid down, and my wife didn't tell me this at the time, but she was already nervous going into that appointment because Phoebe was super active, like just always moving. And in that last day or so, my wife didn't feel her moving at all. And she didn't tell me any of this because my wife thought, well, she's over 40 weeks now and she's already big. She's, going to be 8.5, 9-pound baby. She's probably out of room. So she tried to like calm herself down that way. So we went and we laid down, and me and the doctor are joking around like we did every single appointment. And then he got out the heart Doppler, and then he lowered it to her, and we heard nothing. And I wasn't nervous, but my wife started to get nervous immediately. And he was just moving it around, and like every second was a minute. And I could see on his face that he was getting more and more concerned. And finally we hear a heartbeat, and everybody in the room was like, oh my God, thank God. What was that about? And then he said, hold on 1 second. And then he did it again, and he picked up my wife's wrist. And what we were hearing was my wife's heartbeat because her heart was beating so strong and fast. It was picking it up all the way in the womb. Yeah. Wow. He then sent us to get an ultrasound, and then it was confirmed that she had died. Somewhere between 40 weeks and 5 days, she passed away. So not only did we have the trauma of losing her after 40 weeks and having a stillborn, but we also had PTSD because it was a sudden event. We've talked to people who've lost kids through diseases and stuff like that, and they get this. These aren't my words. This is one mother said this to me, that she had an on-ramp to that grief versus a sudden car crash. And so we had a lot to work out with that, not just the trauma of losing a kid, but then how to get over the PTSD of it. And that's where we learned about something called EMDR. Do you know what EMDR is?
Yeah, it's a trauma treatment method. Is that the tapping?
Yes.
Or the
It's crazy.
It worked?
It worked.
Huh.
It's amazing. And there's something about the sensations in the hands that because you hold paddles, and if I remember it right, they vibrated or something. And then you have to relive that trauma. And that sucks. That's not suck. Easy. Yeah. But there's something while you're reliving it with the vibrations in your hand, and it takes it out of the short-term memory and puts it in the long-term memory in your brain. And it works. Yeah. You have to do more than one session, but it works. It's crazy.
How long did you experience trauma before you did the treatment, and what were your biggest trauma symptoms?
The biggest symptoms that I had there were two. Right afterwards, it was seeing other babies. That was awful. Yeah. That was terrible. And then the other one that I had, because we got pregnant a year later, almost a year later to the day, we had our rainbow baby, our son Theo, who is amazing. He's like literally born, I think, 3 days after Phoebe would have been 1. So he was a total blessing. But then I got trauma all over again because he was a boy and we lost a girl, and I wasn't prepared for that at all. And it's something that's, I don't expect people to understand, but people who have been in that situation, they get it. But like, you're super happy that you have a baby. Mm-hmm. And then there's this other part of you that still feels incomplete because it wasn't the gender that you lost. Like, because when you find out that you're going to have a boy or a girl, you know, you project the whole life.
I hadn't thought about
the
that.
second you find out that, you know, you're going to have a girl, you can picture a nursery that's going to be pink, and you can picture father-daughter dances, and you can picture, you know, dancing with her at her wedding. You can picture all these things. And then you lose her, and that's all gone. It's like somebody highlighted and deleted that entire life that you spent months projecting. And then you have a boy, and you're super happy, and you project all of that, but it's not what was deleted. That was really hard to deal with.
So had you already done trauma treatment in that year before he was born, and this reflared it?
Yeah, and but it was totally different. It was all different. And then having, you know, people around you have girls and stuff like that, it just re-triggered everything.
You're in a job and a role where you have to be on, and you have to have, you know, your spark. You have to be like when people have those days where they're just humming and they're just on and they're the life of the party. Right. You basically have to elicit that every day.
Yeah.
How did this impact that?
Oh, hugely.
I'm sure.
Oh my God.
What was that like?
So, you know, obviously with the morning radio show, we had to tell the audience that we were pregnant, and the whole time that we were doing the pregnancy, that, you know, we were giving updates and having funny stories and stuff like that. So listeners were going along on the journey. And that wasn't just us.
Yeah.
That's if you're a good broadcaster, if you're a good, especially morning radio show host, you should let listeners in on your life, and they should be part of it and stuff like that. So, you know, so Phoebe died, and the show did not go on the next day. And listeners knew that we were close to having her. And some of them were getting suspicious as to, like, did something happen? And then at the time we had a different co-host, but Katie was on the show. And we made the decision, like, well, we have to say what happened. Mm-hmm. And they said, do you want us to say? And I said, no. I said, I don't think you guys should. I think it should be me.
Wow.
And then my wife, and this really impressed me because she's super introverted, she said, I want to go with you. I want to tell everybody too.
Wow.
So we went on, I think, 4 days after she died. And we were grateful for our company for understanding, but they allowed us to do whatever we wanted. And we were on for like an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 30 minutes. We didn't play any music. We didn't play any commercials. And we told the story of what happened. And then it was just listener after listener calling with condolences or similar stories.
So you felt love.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And then and that was the first time we felt good after we lost her, was leaving. But then the second we got home, it was bad. Like, because then you're just that was actually something to do. But going back to that empty house is just terrible. It's so hard. And then we had our nursery already too. So like, you're just reminded of everything. So when I was in the hospital though, right after we lost her, I called Katie, my co-host, and I was crying on the phone, and I asked her to come by, and she came by the hospital, and we were sitting outside the cafeteria, and I told her, I was like, I'm worried I'm never going to be funny again. I forget what she said, but she said, you will be. Essentially, you will be. But I definitely had that thought, though, at the time, like, there's no coming back from this.
And was that, not only will I not be funny, but I'll never feel even joy again?
Oh, like, definitely.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, how can anybody, all I wanted to do was talk to somebody who also had a stillborn after we had it. Because I had the thought, how can anybody know what this is like and not have killed themselves?